Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Carrie Hopkins Doubts. Carrie and I are going to be talking on the topic from heartbreak to healing, embracing the next chapter of your life. Welcome, Carrie.
Hello, Myrna. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, so looking forward to our conversation. Welcome. All right, guys. So let me give you a brief introduction. Carrie Hopkins Doubts is dedicated to supporting individuals through major life transitions. As the founder of Life's Next Chapter Coaching, she helps men and women embrace change as a transformative opportunity. Carrie's personal experience with profound loss have fueled her passion for guiding clients to reclaim their power and realign with their purpose. Carrie holds a Master's of Arts in Spiritual Psychology from the University of Santa Monica and is a professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. She founded Life's Next Chapter Coaching in 2013 to support individuals during difficult periods in their lives, helping them rebuild and consciously create the lives they desire. In addition to coaching, Carrie volunteers extensively. She serves as chair of the Ethics Independent Review Board for the International Coaching Federation and facilitates various support groups and educational sessions. As a senior partner with the Wellness Universe, Carrie continues to contribute to the well-being of others through multiple platforms and initiatives. Awesome, awesome. All right. So yes, so from one professional certified coach to
Yeah.
another, this should be a great
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward
this should
to
be
it.
a great conversation. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start off with some curiosity. I know that you started your business based on your loss, and before we hit record, you mentioned that your late husband. So, can you share with us your personal journey and what
Mm,
led you to start Life's Next Chapter Coaching?
sure. I do love talking about this because it's so personal, isn't it, when we decide to become a coach. So,
Mhm.
actually, what got me into the field of self-development and getting my master's degree in spiritual psychology was my divorce. So that was right around 1992. I was going through a big, transition in my marriage and we had an amicable divorce. And at the same time, it was one of the most painful things I'd ever gone through. And I was really determined to not keep building and making the same mistakes in a future relationship that I'd made in my first marriage. And so, yes, that got me into taking the master's program. And then I also, at that time, was studying to be a marriage and family therapist. And so I took all the coursework and I got into my internship, and I decided that was really not the path for me. I didn't enjoy working within the medical model, and I found coaching at that point in my life and got my certification as a coach. And then in the period of time when I was finishing up, they offered specialization tracks at the place that I went to. And for that year and that year only, they offered a specialization in grief coaching. And I was like, oh, wow. It just like got my attention in a big way. And I specialized in grief coaching. I got my grief counseling certification after that as well. And I started coaching people going through major loss in their lives. I worked a lot with people who had lost a partner and, really talking about the monumental shifts that take place on the inner and the outer levels of consciousness for people when they go through something like that. And then fast forward to 3 years ago, I lost my second husband. He died suddenly. And so
Wow.
not only had I, had these years of working in this area, but it got real, it got granular for me. And So at this point in my coaching career, I really do feel that this is still the place. It's my calling to work with people going through grief because, I've been there. And when people are talking with someone who's been where you are, it just creates a level of closeness and a level of understanding that is really beneficial. So that's how I started all of this.
Wow. Wow, that's the opposite of how I expected it. I thought you were going to
Ah,
tell me my husband died and I went to a coach and then I did, coaching because I was having a difficult time and then I went to the coaching and then decided to become a coach because that's usually the progression
mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm.
someone that's into coaching. You don't
Yeah,
believe how many clients of mine have become coaches because
yeah.
they came into the coaching, conversation and then they decided that's the path that they want to go on. So
Mm-hmm,
it's very interesting that you picked a specialty of grief, and it's really interesting how a lot of times, God just gives you the pathway, and we don't even
mm-hmm,
know why we make these decisions, but it was presented to you, you thought it was a great idea to specialize in it, and then you had to coach yourself. Now, let me
mm-hmm.
ask you out of curiosity, the reason that a lot of people say that when you specialize as a coach, it's because of personal experience. Like you're not reading it in a book. Well, how did
Mm-hmm.
it change from when you were going through it to what you learned in school? How did it
That's
change for you?
that's such a great question because in the first a few months of my Tom's passing, I was immersed in a lot of work at the time that he passed, and I kind of finished out that work that I was doing, and I took a pause on creating new clients at that point because I really wanted to turn inward and do my own healing and my own work. And at one point, I even like took my grief counseling certification off the wall. It was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. It's just too painful. It's too much. It's too real. And
Mhm.
it took me some time to just be with myself. And you mentioned, yeah, I have a program that I had created for rebuilding your life after loss. And I was like, well, this is a great time for me to take my own program. So I actually took myself through all of the steps and all of the processes. I also did have the help of a coach who worked with me at that time. And through that process, I did come back into welcoming and working with people again, going through these kind of major life transitions, divorce, loss of a child, loss of a spouse, or any other really important relationship. So I hope I answered the question.
Yes, no, kind of. I wanted to know if practical and theory is two different things.
Oh,
Because, you
well,
know,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, like you created the course, but you didn't have
yeah.
any personal experience. So
I
I
did
wanted
have
to
some
know,
personal, yeah. No, I hear you. I
yeah,
had some
right.
yeah. I'd
Yeah.
lost both my parents at that point. So I did have, but it was a
Okay.
different experience losing my husband.
Yeah.
And it was really uncanny that it's like I'd created the maps. I knew, the territory. And then I got to walk it. And
Mm,
sometimes on my hands and knees. So that
mm,
was really the difference between my
yeah.
coaching then and my coaching now.
No, exactly.
I've
Yes.
walked this territory. I
Yes.
know it
Yes, exactly. It makes a difference. It makes a
makes a
difference
difference.
because,
Yeah.
you know, I remember listening to someone preach, and they said, my experience, I'm not reading it out of a book. I've lived it, I've walked it, and nobody can come and tell me something if they have not walked through it, because a lot of people feel that way. So
Hmm.
now it's perfect that, not saying your strategy was great for your job, but I mean, it gives you a little bit more insight other than just practicality. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking that, yeah, God steered you into this path,
Yeah.
and then gave you, the
Hmm.
insider job on it. But yeah, you're right. You know, I I am one of the lucky ones, you know. My both parents are still living. The only person that I've lost is a grandma, and she was 82, and so. But I've had a lot of people on the show talk about grief,
Mm.
and boy, that stuff sucker punches you.
Hmm.
I mean, I hear one woman described it as, you know, trying to keep your head above water, and sometimes you get your head up and then the wave is going to come and it's going to crash
Hmm.
you down and you're going to sink again, and it's never ending. You don't know, there's no like, okay, you do this for 6 months and it's going to be gone. It's something that stays for a while, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
good that we have coaching and books and help, therapy to help people cope, because it's, yeah, you mentioned that sometimes you're crawling on your hands or your knees. It is bad. And I don't think there's anything, we don't want to put grades on grief, but they're saying that, loss of a child, loss of a spouse, parents, those are the top three. But grief can go, yeah, some people go through some really painful divorces.
Yeah.
And they don't really recover from it, and they grieve because someone hurt them.
Hmm.
And even grieving, losing your home, things like that. So there's
Oh,
lots of
yeah.
grief. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So
You know, what
yeah.
I learned from my own experience was not to be afraid of grief, to really
Mhm.
embrace it. That it's not going to pull me under, it's not going to do me in, to meet it with compassion, to meet it with love. And, just understanding that to the extent that we love what we have lost, we will grieve that deeply. And so it's just part of the natural progression of life. And if we can stop being afraid of it, stop pushing it away, stop, you know, resisting it, it it will it will shape you, in a way that you hadn't really counted on in life.
It's true. It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. Any of the challenging experiences in life that we go through, when you come out on the other end of it, you come out stronger, you come out a better person. And yeah, it's unfortunate that grief shapes us, that we have to go through that pain, because
Hmm.
it's extremely painful,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. So like I just mentioned, grief is not just death, but it's like major
Hmm.
transitions from an old life to new life. Even people sometimes can grieve losing money. Some people lose, millions of dollars, and they
Hmm.
grieve that. So,
Hmm.
how can we, you just mentioned that, you don't hide and resist grief. You embrace it and feel love for it. How
Hmm.
do you teach your clients to do that?
Well, we slow them down. And I slow them down, and we get into, working with it, and we talk with it. We have a conversation with grief. What does it need from you? What do you need while you are grieving? We really slow things down to kind of that very foundational level of, how you go through anything is based on how you're going to be with yourself while you go through it. So for many people, for the first time, learn a depth of self-compassion for themselves that
Mm.
they haven't been able to access before. So that it's really based on, can you really love yourself? Can you let love you through this? And,
Hmm.
everybody has a different, perhaps spiritual focus, but, I do bring in what is your spiritual beliefs. Often going through a major sudden loss like that, it will shake your foundation, and it will shake your self-identifications. It will shake your faith sometimes. People go through, you have to reinvent yourself and reinvent the worldview. that you now are going to move into. So it's a process of slowing down, and it's really the very first step in my program is creating a safety net. So it's creating an understanding of the emotional process, how emotions work, in our consciousness, and how they are when we just let them in and we feel them, we name them, we express them, and then they release. And so you may, go through this many, many times because different feelings are going to come in, right? Well, here's sadness. Well, here's anger. Well, here's
Hmm.
regret.
Hmm.
All of these feelings. And if we meet them, the next one will come through. So if we're
Hmm.
not resisting them and pushing them away, people think that coping is distancing themselves, from their pain. And
Hmm.
yeah, you have to dose yourself. You have to do what's manageable, right? You can't just,
Right.
feel like, oh, I can't even get out of bed. So it's
Hmm.
really helping people sort of understand their self-reliance and self-resilient behaviors that you're going to start, exhibiting. And there's also the grieving that you're going to do, and you're going to go back and forth between those. And
Right.
so it's again to if you breathe through this feeling, you will make it. You're going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've learned that not necessarily grieving,
Hmm.
but any uncomfortable emotion that a lot of people don't want to feel it. They medicate themselves because they
Hmm.
want to they drink or they smoke or they do something because they don't want to feel it. But
Hmm.
I've learned that if you sit with it and let it just pass through you, you're right. It's the first step in healing, whether it's, the trauma or grief or whatever. You've got to, and then the more times you sit with it, the less times you feel it. I understand how it works. But it's interesting that I know that there's seven or something stages of grief, and one of the stages is anger, right? Correct?
Well, I don't work with the stage
You
model.
don't work with the stages.
No,
But I heard
no.
you mention
So,
emotions, but okay, so I
yeah.
thought those emotions were coming from the stages. No?
Well, no, I see grief more as a spiral, so rather than going through stages, it's really a misinterpretation in some ways of the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And
Yeah,
the thing about grief is it's very fluid. We're going to go from people think, oh, here I am in bargaining. Now I'm going to be in, it's
right.
only three more stages until I get to acceptance. And grief doesn't work that way. It's very fluid. You're going to go from feeling angry to feeling grief to feeling relief to feeling, so it's very fluid. And I think of it more of as a spiral. So if you think of all of these different experiences, emotional experiences that you go through, and you're spiraling through them. And as you're working with them consciously, and like I said, in this way of not resisting, what you find is the duration and the frequency of these feelings start to lessen, and you start to feel a little bit more of the more positive, the gratitude, the positive memories and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't work with the stages of grief because the anger, all of these feelings, all of these behaviors, they do just keep spiraling around. So it helps people to understand that, hey, I might be crying today, I might be crying in 2 more weeks. It doesn't mean that I'm doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, uh, right. A lot of people talk about the stages of grief because you're right. Whether you go through them, chronologically or you go through them randomly, I think that you do visit them all. And what you're saying is what I've heard before is that it's a never-ending process. One day
Right.
you're up and the next day something comes and knocks you down, and then
Right.
you're back to the beginning or something.
Yeah.
So that's a good, that's a, that's good information for someone that's listening that have gone through, that are grieving, and they're worried about, like you said, I mean, when am I
Mm-hmm.
going to get to the end? When am I going to get to acceptance? But what you're saying, you can get all the way to acceptance, and then something triggers you, and
Mm-hmm.
you're right back to anger, or you're right back to,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, some of the other stages or something. So yeah, it's good to because to set your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times people set their expectations. My daughter, um uh, her fiance committed suicide,
Mm.
and
Oh man.
she was
Wow.
in grief for a long time, and
Yeah.
the conversation I remember most to this day, like if it was yesterday. She's calling me at work. She's at work and she's saying, Mom, the days are not getting any better.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
still long. You know what I mean? You're sitting
Yeah.
here and you're like, you waiting to get through this day because it's
Mm-hmm.
long. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? She says it's not getting any better. And yeah, I
Well,
didn't even have an
that thing I
answer.
talked to you about, working with the feelings and accepting them and all, and the process of feeling and releasing, we don't do that too well on our own. We need a safe person to help us do that kind of work. Otherwise, and myself included, I was just like, I don't want to feel that by myself. But working with another person who will hold for you
Mhm.
while you go through this and just, uh, understanding that this is part of the process. The other person doesn't need to be fixed or saved from this. It's, I'm sure your daughter, because grief, grief and loss by suicide is a complex grief because there's so many feelings that go on top of that of the, did I do something wrong? Da 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 da. Yeah.
Guilt,
And
all that
yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah. And
Hmm.
and so it's really helpful. And I hope your daughter did seek support with this because that's a hard row to hoe by yourself.
She did, but she didn't seek it immediately. It took her some time,
Mm-hmm.
and then she
Mm-hmm.
did because she
Yeah,
recognized that she was moving forward,
sure.
and she did seek therapy, and she's getting better every day.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, that's a huge loss, a fiance. See, you talked about the secondary losses, and any kind of loss like this, there's also going to be the secondary losses of the dreams that we had for the future. For many people who've lost a spouse, it's like, okay, I might lose my home. I might, have to move to another community. Many people have
Yes.
to do that. There's many secondary losses that come
Mhm.
along. Even just the role of, for myself, I loved being a wife. I
Right,
loved being Tom's wife, and I'm not a wife anymore. And
right.
that role identity, it's something that it was a loss just in and of itself.
Yeah.
Taking off the wedding rings and doing all of that stuff that just changes your way of identifying yourself in the world. So yeah, there's a lot to it that just besides the grief of missing this person who's been a part of your life every day, for
Yeah,
years and years and years.
hard. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was and you're right. Divorce can be just as painful as death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's you can still call the person, but I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of women that have been hurt, the men maybe too. I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
speak for them, but I know a lot of women have been hurt,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes irreparably from a betrayal or a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like someone died to them. So
Yeah.
yeah, grief definitely has, and even parents too. Some people
Sure.
can't even get over their parents' death,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
most of us will experience that if we live
Oh
long
yeah.
enough,
That's
right?
right. That's right. That's kind of my soapbox that I get on as we get older. We in our society, we're not prepared very well for grieving. We're told all these, things that were passed down. Oh, you just, show that stiff upper lip and you got to move on and, grieve and by yourself and don't be pulling everybody else down and all of those things. But
Mm,
you're right, when people, and I work with men and women in both
mm,
cases of loss of the marriage, either through divorce or through bereavement. A lot of times in a divorce, people will be talking to me and sharing the feeling part of it. And I said, what it sounds to me is like you're grieving. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, and you
right.
have permission to grieve. There's a
Yes.
lot of losses here, not only the loss of the relationship, but the loss of the future that you thought you were building together,
Yes.
and the loss of maybe his family doesn't want to talk to you anymore, and you've been very close to them in the past, and the children are having their own issues, and
And
there's
having
so
somebody
many.
at home
Yeah.
that you love because you got to split it. And yes, trust me,
Hmm.
that's one of the hardest
Hmm.
parts.
Yeah. So
Selling
when
the house.
people relate to themselves of,
Mhm.
oh, I'm grieving, it's like, oh, okay, that's why I feel that way. And that's why it's not so helpful when my girlfriends say, you just need to move on and get over him. I never liked him anyway, and we're going to get you out there. And they're like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not ready. And I just, yeah, you need to grieve, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yes. 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 We just think of the pain, but we didn't, always label it as grief. But yeah, living it as grief is great because you suffered a loss.
Hmm.
You might still be able to pick up the phone and call them. You might still see them when they come to get the kids, but it's death to you.
Well,
It's to you. It's
there's a
grief.
different flavor to the grief and when you're going through a divorce. And I think there's a quote by Stephen Levine who says it just perfectly. It says, losing a spouse through death, it breaks your heart. Losing a spouse through divorce, it shreds your heart.
Oh
And
wow.
the feeling that
That's
you
like it's
get,
worse.
because it's like, because I don't know about other people who've gone through a divorce, but I certainly experienced this. The whole judgment of myself of what's wrong with me. Why am I so unlovable that this person who used to love me doesn't love me anymore? What did I do wrong? So you hear what I'm doing. I'm heaping all this judgment of myself
Right.
onto the pain of the separation. And that's where
Mhm.
the shredding comes in. And that's where coaching is so helpful to help people really challenge those thoughts that just because this happened, does it have to mean that you're unlovable? Does it have to mean that there's something wrong with you? Can we just
No, it's the
separate
other
those
person.
out? Hmm.
The other person, right?
Yeah.
Trust me,
Yeah.
don't take it on because we have no control of other people. One of
Hmm.
the first things I learned in coaching.
That's right.
Yeah, we have no control over other people.
Yeah. We have dominion over ourselves, but not other people,
Yes,
right?
it's yourself, right?
Hmm.
So, you also say that we can use mindfulness to help us
Mm.
grieve.
Hmm.
How are you teaching your clients to do that?
I think very simple and basic mindfulness techniques I do teach people. When you get self-regu or deregulated, when you're emotionally upset, right? And you're in a high state of anxiety or fear or anger, any of those things. Often I will teach a breathing technique that helps people slow themselves down and re-regulate their parasympathetic nervous system. So there's a lot of great meditation, guided meditations out there that help with that. So I use mindfulness as a way of just slowing down and becoming more present with what is. There's also a mindfulness exercise that I take people through, especially who are going through a divorce, because you know how it's like. You have all of these. Here you are, your spouse has said, "I want a divorce," and you have all of these fears about and uncertainties about what the future is going to be like. You have all these regrets about the past, and you spend a lot of time ruminating about the past, thinking about what, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda done this, it would have been okay. And you spend a lot of time going into the future and making up these negative future fantasies about I'm going to be on the street eating cat food and my children will hate me. So it's like we spend a lot of time out of the present moment. And so I help people understand that there's no power in the past, there's no power in the future. The only power you have is right now in this present moment. You take in a deep breath. Are you okay right now? Yeah. Can you
Right.
keep your head where your feet are? So that's a real mindfulness approach to the anxiety that we get into when we're spinning.
Yeah, yeah. Mindfulness is big.
Yeah.
I'm a meditator. I meditate every day, and I'm in the mindfulness space. And yeah, one of the great things about mindfulness is that you didn't mention it, but one of the great things is that you can visualize the future you want.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go into the fair eating cat food. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of it. The purpose is
Mm-hmm.
to the
Yeah.
purpose of it is that when you go, to the source, you state what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, hey, this was a marriage that didn't work out because of this, this, and this. The next one, I want this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And you state your claim. And
Mm-hmm.
and mindfulness with visualization is great. But yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the mindfulness because I do the guided meditations most of the times too.
Mm,
One of the
mm,
mindfulness meditations that I've worked with, they said when you and you said it perfectly. I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh that I love. The guy from the
mm,
monk from France,
mm-hmm,
and he was saying that you can go into the future, you can go into the past, but what's right in front of you right now? You know what I mean? What is in front of you right now? A lot of times we spin into um, uh, all the things that someone has done to us, worrying about what they're going to do to us in the future,
mm,
and you
mm-hmm,
get upset, and
mm-hmm,
you're not even there. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
We get
Yeah.
upset because what happens with our thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm,
Thoughts and feelings, we feel them in our body, and we
mm-hmm,
start getting upset. But he says, "What's in front of you right now?"
mm-hmm.
They're not, but and that's helped me in my marriage. When I
Mm,
want to, because even when you're married, you always have these things that you're, upset about that someone has
yeah.
done or they're not
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whenever I want to go there, I just remember what's happening right now. I'm watching
Mm-hmm,
TV or I'm doing something right now, and that's not there, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's just my imagination. It's just
Right.
my thoughts, and they're not real, right? So,
It brings your energy back to what's
mhm,
possible right now. Because
yes,
when you're throwing it away into these places where you're not, you're just
mhm,
sending your energy down the drain
yes.
and
Mhm.
yeah,
You're
we're
making your
human. We
you're
do
making
that.
yourself feel bad too, because I mean I'm not going to quote it correctly, but I think that thoughts or emotions and feelings or something is in the body or however that is, but you feel them. Everything you're thinking makes
Hmm.
a difference in your chemistry of your
Yeah.
body.
The
So yes.
thoughts
Mhm.
create the emotions. The emotions are the energy that the thoughts ride on. So if you have a positive thought, you're going to have a positive feeling to match and perhaps a positive behavior that
Right.
will
That's where I was
arise
going.
out
I
of
knew there was a
that.
loop. Right.
Yeah. And if you're having a negative thought, it's going to create, it's
Mhm.
like, I'm going to be alone forever.
Yes.
That could be a negative thought. The
Yes.
feeling could be
Then your stomach
hopelessness.
starts turning
Right,
and
right.
you feel it in your body.
And then you
Exactly.
start
Right.
isolating, right?
Hmm.
So all of they line up. And I'm not a huge proponent of positive, you know,
The affirmation.
reinforcement and, affirmations. There's a certain amount of the experiencing of the feelings that when grief comes, we just need to sit with. And we're not going to just turn that frown upside down, because that just doesn't work.
Right.
But once somebody has had sufficient time to really process and release their upset, automatically start some of those other more authentic qualities are going to start coming in. Your own resourcefulness, your own capability, your own creativity, your own knowing that I'm whole and complete just as I am. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with me.
Right.
So the authentic self qualities can, because they're always there, that we
Right.
can tap into them when we don't have all this interference from the
The
lower
thoughts.
emotions. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, the thoughts and the feelings and the
Hmm.
emotions and what's going on
Yeah.
in your body and all that stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very true. All right. So, what are some of the self-care strategies that
Mm.
someone that's grieving can do for
Yeah.
themselves?
Well, it's first of all to recognize, often when you're grieving, especially, I find this with women, especially who are maybe divorcing or are widowed and they're caring for children by themselves. Their own self-care just goes straight out the window. And I tell people that it's really important. You don't have the capacity to give if your cup is empty. And so it's a very, so I talk about radical self-care. So I really start with the premise of you have to put yourself into the equation or else you're going to have nothing to give. And you're going to
Mm.
burn out and you're going to create more problems for everyone around you than if you just take that 10 minutes, that 30 minutes to do whatever it is that nurtures you. And everybody has a different thing, their thing that nurtures them. And we talk really about the difference between nurturing and indulging, because you can get into the indulging of, it's cupcakes. Cupcakes are the go-to self-nurturing thing for me. And I was like, wait a minute. Let's let's really talk about that. Is if you see yourself using the cupcake as your self-nurturing mechanism, what are the unintended consequences of that? Well, yeah, you're probably going to put on weight and you're not going to feel so good about yourself. So what does the cupcake represent to you? Well, it's the sweetness of life. It's so what can we give you to put into your life, or what can you stop doing to nurture yourself? Maybe it's stop worrying about everybody else and really focus on yourself. Do that meditation in the morning to get yourself really focused on, where do I want my to place my mind today? So
Mhm.
there's a bevy of things that we talk about. I break it down into physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level of approaches to
Okay.
self-nurturing. And so I have people create a project, your self-nurturing project. What are you going to do this week? And they actually map it out and they track it. Because the thing that we track and take, care of to make the check mark, uh, that we focus on will increase. And
Yes.
there's this like basic self part of us that loves making the check marks. Yep, I did my
Right.
yoga today. Yep, I did my
Yeah.
Pilates today. Yep, so there's a lot it's tailor-made to the individual and what it is that they need. There's some assessments that we do just to say, what's working in your life right now? What isn't working? Where do you want to focus?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But it's
Yes.
this real understanding that you have to put yourself first. And that's
Right.
that's a huge game changer for people. Often we're just conditioned to, run after everybody else is taken care of. And, oh, my self-care is just to have 5 minutes alone in the bathroom. It's just like, wait a minute, can we do a little better than that?
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone on this show just a couple of days ago, and I remember we were talking something. I don't even know what we're talking about, but the visual I had in my head was exactly that. You've seen movies, I don't know anyone in real life, but movies where the mother goes in the bathroom, to get a little 5 minutes, and the darn kids are knocking on the door.
Hmm.
Mommy, when are you coming out?
And she's screaming at them, "Leave me alone! Give me this at least."
But yeah, you can't even get 5 minutes in the bathroom. But yeah, so
Well, I help people understand that that's a choice and they can make a
uh,
different choice. You know, they can start carving out this time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day,
yeah.
right? And we make choices about how we're going to spend them. So, it's easy to, play into a victim mentality of I have to. I have to do all this other stuff. It's like, well, let's take a look at have to and choose to. Different
Mhm.
vocabulary words, completely different energy,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, you're speaking to the choir because I have a routine that I prioritize self-care. I
Mm,
have my morning routine for my self-care in the morning, and I have an evening routine for my
mm-hmm,
self-care in the morning. But I'm self-employed, don't got any kids running around now. My kids are
mm,
grown, so I have the comfort to do that.
yeah.
But I just talked about my daughter again. She just got one kid and a husband and no self-care
Mm,
because she's always doing. So, it's
mm-hmm,
and I get like a lot of mothers are like that.
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
it's not that I don't tell her.
mm-hmm, mm,
She doesn't listen.
mm. Well,
So
when we're
listen.
young, we think we can get away with it, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's also. Listen, I ran track at school, so I have been doing exercising and working on the body and whatever since I was young. So I'm never in the group where I don't exercise. So
Mm,
it's
mm-hmm,
all mindset and everything. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of people don't do it. A lot of people don't
Right,
do it. So,
right, right. So yeah,
all
I
right.
mean, it's all individual to,
Yes.
sometimes it's just can you get more sleep? Can you get 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep? Sometimes it's that simple,
A small
right?
little tweak like that, right? Get into
Yeah,
bed early. Put the
yeah,
kids down early. Get to bed early. You're
yeah,
right. So
right.
that's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
one, that
yeah,
nobody can say they can't do.
yeah. And sometimes, okay, we need to create a better bedtime ritual for you to
Right,
relax into your
right.
sleep. So,
Yeah, yeah,
it's really just like I said, it's very individual and everybody creates their own project in my program and then we track it. How are you doing with this? Well, this is going really well. This not so much. Well,
right,
let's talk
right,
about
right,
that.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I love it. All right, so tell us about your coaching program. It's called Life's Next Chapter.
Hmm.
And you also say that your process differs from traditional therapy or counseling. So tell us about your program, what makes it different. I
Yeah.
think you've told a lot of it already. So anything you want
Well,
to add?
I'll go through the step. As you were talking, we were talking about when I was called into becoming a grief coach. Part of the calling was this download that I got from Spirit, from God. Here's the program, and I just
Mhm.
wrote. I just wrote it down, and this is the what I keep coming back to. It's rebuilding your life after loss. And so there's 9 steps to this. And this is how it's a little different from therapy because therapy can be a little bit more open-ended. And therapy's great. I'm not saying anything against therapy because it's really wonderful. And coaching, I feel when somebody is ready and willing to actually start taking some action and start to create differently, it can create the shift that people are looking for, I think, in a faster way. And that's at least been my experience. It's been the experience of the clients that I've taken through the program. And so the first step is creating a safety net. It's like really talking about that emotional understanding the emotions of grief and emotional self-awareness and just the safety to feel what you feel. And then step 2 is creating capacity, through self-care, through radical self-care. And I mean radical self-care because we're saying put yourself first. And
Mhm.
that's a radical statement for a lot of people. And then the third step is making peace with the past. So we're starting to talk about, where are we holding unforgiveness of things that happened to us in the past? And as we start to release some of that, gives us more energy, more capacity to start designing the vision, which is step four. Some what you talked about, the visualization of what is it you want to create for yourself. And
Great.
then we move
Mhm.
into creating that future through taking action. And then step six is we're exploring purpose and meaning, because purpose and meaning may have been stood on their heads. Why am I still here? What am I to do? And then we talk about reframing the relationship. And that's where we take the relationship, because a relationship is something that happens inside of us, even though it's relatedness to another person. So we're working with how are we relating to that person, whether they're still here on the planet or not. We still have a relationship with them. Or if
Mhm.
it's a divorce, what's our relationship that we want to create with this person? Especially important if you are co-parenting,
Mhm.
because you're going to be a family. So how are we going to co-create this ongoing relationship? Then step eight, we talk about embracing the strengths. So in these steps, you've learned some things about yourself, or what is a strength that I didn't even know that I had, a capability. And then the last is anchoring the learning by giving back in service. So when we've come to the adaptation and to creating our life's next chapter, there's such a profound sense of, I want to help people who are going through this like I did. And so we really talk about how being of service really helps you anchor into that big open-hearted space that you created for yourself. So that's the program. And like I said, it differs from therapy because therapy, like I said, it's a little bit more open-ended. What do you want to talk about today? And there is that as well, because it is coaching as well, but there is a little bit more structure to it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think you've covered all the bases there. It's pretty good. I can imagine that someone coming through that and yeah, they're definitely into their next chapter because it's
Oh yeah.
calling, this show
Whether they
is
want
called
to or not, right?
Yeah, this show is called Transform Your Mind. You go through those steps in that
Hmm.
process, your mind will be transformed.
Oh, sure.
So that's the start,
Yeah.
that's the start of the definitely your new chapter. Your
Yeah.
next chapter, I should say. Yes,
Hmm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So how can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your coaching program? What's your website? What's your
Sure.
social media handles?
Well, so my website is Life's Next Chapter Coaching, and also, I have a Facebook page, same name. I have an Instagram channel, also same name. You can also look me up, Carrie Hopkins Doubts. I also I've created a series of online courses, and I'm going to be launching a smaller version of the Rebuilding Your Life After Loss program in 2025. And it's a hybrid, so there's some online materials and exercises, but every week there's a meeting with me. So the students will meet with me in a group format, and we'll get some coaching. How's this going for you? What are you struggling with? So it's not just self-paced. It's also the community comes together, because I really feel strongly that community is a healing element in my work.
Yes, yes, groups are good. That's
Hmm.
why you see all those meetings, AA meetings and all those other meetings.
Hmm.
You listen to other people, you recognize that you're not alone
Hmm.
in your problem because a lot of times you mentioned the word isolate. People
Hmm.
isolate because they're thinking that it's just me. But then
Right.
once you're around other people that have gone through the same thing and sometimes they inspire you because they've already come out on the other end, right?
Yeah.
And you recognize that you could be there too. So yeah, I do believe in groups and communities, as you want to say, that
Hmm.
helps her. speed up our journey as
Yeah.
well. So that's awesome. All right. Well, I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation, Carrie. And yeah, I mean, I love your work, and I love that we are talking about loss and not necessarily death, but loss in all its forms.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we need to heal from, loss.
Yeah.
And you're right. If we do it ourselves, we might get to the end of our life and never really get there. But
Mhm.
if you get a coach, that speeds up the process because yeah, one of the main things about coaching is that there's a couple of main things about coaching. One, your coach sees your blind spots, stuff that you can't see. And then
Mhm.
secondly, the coach holds you accountable. Like you said, no one wants to be, you know, with a coach and every week you come in, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, right? Sooner or
Mhm.
later, you're going to
Mhm.
start doing it because you hate not doing the work. So coach
That's
holds you
true.
accountable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had many clients who, they come to their session and they say, so how did it go with X, Y, or Z? And it's like, well, I just did it because I didn't want to come into this session saying I didn't do it. It's like, good for you.
Practical thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, yeah, so that's basic things in coaching. So that's amazing. All right. Well, listen, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Transforming Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Today, we were talking about transforming your mind on loss and grief, the steps that you can take to get to the next chapter, because you're still here, you're still breathing, and you've got to be grateful for that. And sooner or later, you will get to the other side. And once you get to the other side, then you want a new chapter. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to be looking forward to and not going backwards. So, Carrie and I, put some nuggets down today and some strategies of how you can get there. Definitely reach out to Carrie if you're interested in her coaching, interested in any of her, um, courses. I will have a link to her website on the show page and also a link to her Instagram and Facebook on the show page, which is myhelps.us. And also a summary of our conversations. If you missed anything, you can go and click on that. So as we wrap up, Carrie, any last words?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show and thank you for all the work that you do in the world to bring your message of hope and clarity for people who are struggling. And I think just the last words is, you don't have to struggle through this alone. Find someone that you can talk to that can and will companion with you while you go through this. It makes the journey. We're here walking each other home, so let's just be that for each other.
I like that. Walking each other home. I love that. Yeah, yeah. Listen, support is very important. It doesn't even have to be a community. You just need one friend or
Hmm.
someone in your corner, and
Hmm.
it makes the walk so much easier. So I hope for anyone that's listening or watching on TV that you have at least one person in your corner
Yeah.
that can help you through this. So thank you, Carrie, for being on the show. Loved our conversation. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you.